Hey all viewers and viewers, my name is General Red Strategist and welcome back to Sir You're Being Hunted. This is episode 257, if I'm not mistaken. Now, we are starting another challenge. Of course, I kind of failed the Postman Pat one right at the bloody end there, didn't I? Because, it's typical General Red fashion. Just as I get towards the end of the challenge, I fuck it up, and I completely mess up, and then I fail. But, without further ado, we're going to just set off with another one and hope for the best. Now, I think... if I remember correctly, the challenge that, this challenge which I'm doing here was set by a viewer by the name of Sloychammer, or Sludgehammer, something like that. I'm sorry if I'm forgetting your name. But this is the Spy Challenge, everybody. Now, it's fairly straightforward. We're going to do a playthrough of the game, as normal. What you expect, standard pretty much. But the idea is that I have to basically not be seen by any robots whatsoever. Now, there's a twist to this, though. If I do get seen, that doesn't mean it's a game over. What it means is that I have to kill the robots who saw me. So if I fail to kill any of them, that's when the challenge fails. Because, of course, I am a spy, and I cannot be seen. Now, I'm going to quickly set my things to the correct slots in the hotbar. Because I've got all the bits and bobs. I'm going to discard the crockery, because it's freaking useless, and the pipe. There we go, right, let's put the binoculars up there, and the clock up there, and the pie there. Every spy needs a trusty pie. That rhymes just nicely, everybody. So yes, I'm not quite 007, but I'm the next best thing. I am General Red, and I am the best spy, clearly. Maybe I should do this entire challenge talking like Sean Connery, It talks just like this in every movie he's ever been in. Actually, that reminds me. I was watching a video recently on YouTube by that Mad Cat who does a lot of Yogscast compilations, and one of actually, there's two videos roughly by this title, but obviously that Mad Cat has done compilations of sips with his inappropriate, well, not necessarily inappropriate, but various Twitch stream donations that people have sent to him, including some rather funny ones. And I remember there was one. Which was basically somebody doing I say somebody doing an impersonation. Obviously, his donation system uses the text-to-speech software, whatever it is, and the voice of one of these donations was basically doing a Sean Connery impersonation, and it was hilarious. Hey, Ships, shall we go for tennis? Shall we go on a sailing trip to San Francisco? Absolutely hilarious. So yes, I must say though, it's been a very, very long time since I've watched any of Sean Connery's James Bond movies. Because the thing is, he was the original Bond. I'm just stocking up on a lot of food here for no reason other than because I can. I think I see birds up there, so I was just listening for robots. I don't see any. Right, let's start moving and try and find some device pieces. Now, incidentally, what was the last Sean Connery James Bond movie that I ever watched? Probably Thunderball, I think. Yeah, like I say, I've not watched Sean Connery's Bond movies for a long while. Yes. Thing is, if people were to ask me who would be my favourite Bond, i.e., who do I think the good ones are, I would have to say Daniel Craig, probably one of them. I know this is a bit of a divisive choice. Some people don't like Daniel Craig. They say he's a bit too thuggish. And he's just not got that same, maybe, gentlemanly charm that is sometimes associated with Bond. But, I don't know. Well, the thing is, Bond is basically a killer, He's an agent who is prepared to take life in service of Queen and country and all that. So, I don't know, he's got to be a little ruthless, hasn't he? Surely. And, I remember Casino Royale, right? When Daniel Craig... had his first outing as Bond. Casino Royale was a good movie. It was hella good. It really set the tone. Daniel Craig's subsequent movies, though, admittedly they've been of varying quality. Quantum of Solace was, I don't know, not as good. I think because the plot line was a lot more complex than Casino Royale was. I think a lot of people just, I don't know, didn't think it was as good. Then, of course, what came after Quantum of Solace? It was Skyfall, wasn't it? Skyfall was good, but Again, I still recall Casino Royale being much better than Skyfall was. I don't know, but yeah. Um, but that's not to say that Skyfall wasn't a bad movie. It was a good one. You know, it had plenty of good things going for it. Some memorable action sequences, interesting storyline, all of that, and of course it was Judi Dench's, her last Bond movie. But there you go. You know, I always thought there was a kind of interesting parallel actually with Judi Dench, because of course Judi Dench first came into Bond in GoldenEye in 1995, whatever it was, which was Pierce Brosnan's first outing as Bond, and that was kind of an interesting story in GoldenEye because it was about, of course, a traitorous British agent who, with the help of a former Soviet hacker, tries to. Well, his plan is basically to hack into the Bank of England, steal a load of money, and then use the old Soviet Petya and Mishka GoldenEye weapon system to cover his tracks. You know, that was the story of GoldenEye, wasn't it? And so, you know, hacking and kind of, you know, cyber, well, I wouldn't call it cyber war, but, you know, kind of cyber criminality is obviously a big part of GoldenEye's story. And I always found it kind of interesting that for, you know, Judi Dench's final Bond movie, Skyfall, again, you know, cyber kind of terrorism and cyber crime features quite heavily in that. So there's an interesting little parallel there that I always kind of thought was just worth noting. Yeah, I wonder if that was kind of intentional on the part of the producers. Who knows? I mean, yeah, you know, I don't know a lot about Bond. GoldenEye, I must say, was a good Bond movie, though. I think it was quite, you know, it was quite memorable. I was actually watching a really interesting video on YouTube recently. So, you know, if anyone doesn't know, over here in the UK, down in Dorset, we have Bovington Tank Museum. So, you know, big museum, lots of really old tanks from throughout history. So, you know, First World War, Second World War, Cold War, more modern tanks, things like that. And the Tank Museum actually, you know, has its own YouTube channel, and they do publish videos on there. Usually tank chats, they're called, but every so often they get sort of various celebrities, YouTubers, historians to go on and do sort of, I think it's like top 5 tanks videos. Top 5 favourite tanks that they have, and one of the ones that, you know, well, they have various personalities who are quite interesting. So, for example, Lindy Beige has done a video of that kind. Historian David Fletcher, you know, he's done. Well, actually, he's done quite a few videos for the Tank Museum. The Mighty Jingles, he's done kind of top 5 favourite tanks video for the Tank Museum. And one of the ones I was actually watching recently was by a stuntman by the name of Jim Dowdall. Now, Jim Dowdall has been in a lot of movies, I must say, because, you know, I hadn't heard of the guy before I watched that video, but he has been in so much stuff. You know, he's been in his career for a long, long while. So he's done things like Indiana Jones, and of course, you know, he's done Bond stuff, and he was in GoldenEye. And of course, if you've watched GoldenEye, you will remember there is the famous tank chase through the streets of St. Petersburg, which is a hella good sequence, and a very memorable one.
Faster!
And the thing about that sequence is Jim Dowdall was heavily involved in that, and basically on this Tank Museum video where he's going through his 5 favourite kind of tanks and vehicles like that, he talks a lot about that tank chase sequence in Bond, and it's really, really interesting to listen to, because the tank that was used, well, the tank that was featured in that tank chase was an old Soviet T-55, and by all accounts, the producers of GoldenEye got their hands on 3 T-55s for the movie, which they could use. So there were ones that were in good condition and ones that when they bought them were in terrible condition. They have to put back together. And Jim Dowdall was apparently heavily involved in kind of doing up the tanks to make them actually useful in the movie. But it was just really awesome listening to his stories from the filming and all that. And so he was saying, for example, you know, we needed it to look like Pierce Brosnan was actually driving the tank, but the reality was he wasn't actually driving it. It was Jim Dowdall who was driving it, because of course, you know, Pierce Brosnan, being just an actor, he doesn't know how to drive a fucking tank, but Jim Dowdall does know how to drive a tank. And so, Jim Dowdall was actually driving it through the streets, things like this, and all the while, the way it was filmed, it looks like Pierce Brosnan is doing it, but when actually he's not. But apparently, it was also interesting hearing about how they had to modify that T-55 to actually make it suitable for filming. Because the thing is, Russian tanks, apparently, the driver's compartment is usually either in the centre of the tank or on the left. And I think the case with the T-55 is it's on the left. And when he was showing the T-55 that they have at the Bovington Tank Museum, of course, the hatch on the tank is at the front left. For the driver, that is, for the driver's compartment. And so he's saying that, Brits being Brits, like, the producers of GoldenEye were, they decided to cut a new hatch on the right side of the tank for Pierce Brosnan to sit in and make it look like he was driving. But so whilst, Pierce Brosnan was sat in that sort of section of the tank towards the right, Jim Dowdall, of course, is sat over on the left with the actual controls. And of course, what they had to do is, well, what he had to do, Jim Dowdall, that is, he had to cut out viewing ports on the left-hand side of the tank, extra viewing ports, that is, so that he could actually see where he was going. And the thing is, he just illustrated in the video how dangerous it must have actually been filming those sequences, because apparently he not only cut sort of little viewing holes just to give himself extra field of vision, he also mounted, I think, cameras, one kind of under the tank's barrel and some others kind of on the sides, so that way he had much more vision of what he was doing. But he's saying that, with tanks, because you have such limited visibility, the driver has very limited visibility. Because of that, normally, tanks would have a commander, someone in the turret, who actually directs it and, tells the driver where to go, whether they need to stop, things like that. But of course, because they didn't have someone in the turret, the driver was kind of reliant on their own senses. And, God, it was just... It just kind of illustrates how dangerous it is, because when you're filming it, you've got people running around everywhere, other vehicles, driving about, and you think, they could have easily crashed that tank into something or someone and caused an injury, or perhaps even a death with that thing. But yeah, amazing stuff, I must say. And you're saying, because obviously part of that tank chase is actually filmed in St. Petersburg, and he was talking as well about how they had to get certain permissions, or they had to kind of abide by certain conditions set by the Russian authorities before they could film. For example, the Russians were quite clear on this, that they weren't allowed to use steel tracks on the tank. They had to use rubber tracks instead, so it didn't damage the streets, the actual street surfaces. And of course, what Jim Dowdall was saying was that unfortunately, well, the T-55 doesn't have any rubber tracks. It has steel tracks. There are no kind of rubber tracked variants of it. So what they apparently had to do was they had to get the rubber tracks from a Chieftain tank and engineer them to actually fit the T-55. So that way they could actually make it roadworthy for St. Petersburg. But no, I love just listening to his tales there of the of that filming of the GoldenEye tank sequence. Hella fantastic to listen to, and I'd definitely recommend it. If you're looking for something to watch here on YouTube. Then again, I'd recommend a lot of the videos actually that the Bovington Tank Museum puts out, because they're very, very interesting. Just sticking with the Jim Dowdall video for a little bit. He was also, apart from obviously the T-55, he was looking at other vehicles as well. And he was also showing off the Kettenkrad, which was a German, how do I say it? It was kind of like, it's a German World War II motorcycle, except it had tank tracks. It was a really strange looking vehicle. But apparently he actually used to own one. His actual own Kettenkrad, and used to just drive it round all the time. Apparently he also used to own a Sherman Achilles tank. Well, the things you can buy when you have lots of money, eh? When you're rich, what can you say? But yeah, it was just really interesting overall. Right. Okay. I'm going to have to probably turn this torch off for the moment. Don't know why I've got it switched on. We're in the blooming village. Was that a door? No, it's just a window. I can hear robots somewhere nearby, but I don't see them. Need to be careful. For all intents and purposes, in this video I am 007. Nobody shall see me as I make my way through Peaty Home, the historic market town. Oh, man. So, yes. Let me know in the comments, everybody. Are you a Bond fan? What's your favourite Bond movie? Or what's your least favourite, perhaps? Who knows? I'll be honest, some of the Roger Moore era Bond films I am not a big fan of. I don't know, I find them very gimmicky. No, some of them are okay, actually, and some of them I don't mind, some of them I like. The Spy Who Loved Me, for an example, The Spy Who Loved Me, by way of an example, even, I actually did quite like. I thought it was a decent film. I thought it was interesting. I mean, gimmicky, but I kind of liked it. I think because at the time when I first watched it, I was a kid, and of course I was a bit more, willing to tolerate gimmicky stuff. Because of course the thing about The Spy Who Loved Me is there's a lot of crazy shit in there, and it kind of epitomises that era of James Bond when it tended to get a bit farcical sometimes. Because of course, The Spy Who Loved Me is the one where you have Stromberg as the villain, and he has that giant oil tanker ship that opens up the front to swallow up US and Soviet nuclear submarines, things like that. It's kind of ridiculous. And of course, Stromberg's henchman in that movie is obviously Jaws, who is one of the most ridiculous Bond villains ever. Sort of that kind of 7 or 8 foot giant with steel teeth. But this was A Spy Who Loved Me, which was coming, straight after Live and Let Die, when you had characters like friggin' Tee and things like that. No, actually, was it? No, it wasn't straight after Live and Let Die, was it? No, Live and Let Die was the first Bond movie starring Roger Moore in the title role. Yes, no, Spy Who Loved Me came after The Man with the Golden Gun, which is the one with Christopher Lee, where Christopher, Scaramanga's defining characteristic apparently was that he had 3 nipples. Something, I don't know. Don't ask what thought process was going through the producers' minds. I have no idea. But of course, The Man with the Golden Gun also had its fair share of crazy characters like Knick Knack, for example, the little dwarf henchman. Ah, man. Yeah, Roger Moore was such a gimmicky era for James Bond. What else can we say? But that's kind of why I'm not 100% keen on them anymore as an adult. Like I say, as a kid, I was willing to overlook the just flipping gimmicky shit that they used to get up to, or rather that Bond used to get up to in those movies, but as an adult now, I'm beyond that. Okay, yeah. I mean, to be honest, I haven't really watched Bond movies in a long, long time. I mean, you're saying the last Sean Connery one was Thunderball. That was the last Sean Connery one that I watched, but that was a while back, that was. So in which case, was that the last James Bond movie that I watched, or is there another one? There could be another one, but I'm not sure. But yeah. But getting back to Daniel Craig's Bond movies, which I started off with, of course, he did Spectre after Skyfall, again. Good movie. Yeah, it was a good one, I guess. I still didn't beat Casino Royale for me, but yeah, it was alright. Yeah. And apparently, he's signed on to another one, even though there was that whole thing where he was saying, oh, I might not do another one. Something tells me that the paycheck offer to him may have just swayed his mind a bit there, but oh, I sound so cynical. How terrible of me. How can I say such things? Let me sip my tea and ponder this. Right, we've still got 2 more pieces on this centre island that we need to find. We should be following the wisps. I'm just sort of wandering around randomly talking about James Bond. So let us just kind of concentrate for a second now and actually do what we need to do, which is follow this wisp in the correct direction. And now I should probably keep my guns out, really, in case I need to kill any robot. Ooh, hello. You're a bit close for comfort, aren't you, bud? Let's go around the rocks. Right. Okay. So yes, there you go. What other Bond films have I ever watched in my time? I've watched quite a few of them, I must say, just to stick with this episode's topic of conversation that we've gone with. I'm just trying to think, because I've seen quite a few of them, rather than asking which Bond films have I seen, it would probably be better to ask which Bond films haven't I seen. I don't think I've watched Live and Let Die before. I haven't watched that one. What other ones have I not watched? I think I haven't watched From Russia with Love, which was Sean Connery's second Bond film. Haven't watched that one. And if you want to get really technical, of course, Sean Connery wasn't the first actor to portray Bond. there's at least one I can think of who was before Sean Connery, and that was David Niven, and he actually starred in an actual older version of Casino Royale, but I've never seen that because I think that's old. And I think an interesting fact was that David Niven had previously worked with Ursula Andress. You remember her, who was the first Bond girl? Well, not the first. She's not the first kind of female romantic interest character, I don't think, who appeared in Doctor No, but she's the most iconic one of that first Sean Connery James Bond film. But yeah, a James Bond film actually that I think a lot of people forget exists. What was it called? Never Say Never Again. That's one that everyone forgets about because it was made by a completely different studio to the majority of Bond films, and it was kind of a kind of adaptation of the Thunderball story, and it changed a lot of things. I remember seeing it. I think I've seen it. At least there are snippets of it that I can remember, so I'm assuming I've watched the whole thing. But I don't know. Maybe I'm misremembering that. I don't know. Right, I need to deal with these two over here. How are we going to do this? Maybe we should throw a few bottles, because of course they're hogging my inventory space. Careful not to stand up, Red. That's not a very good spy manoeuvre, that. Standing up where the adversaries can see you. Now here's a good spy move. Throwing glass bottles. What? Take that. Oh, come on, why are the robots fucking around, not going where I want them to go? Take that. God, they're so annoying. Go! Go! Go, get me. Oh, I need to move. I need to move some stuff. Come on. There we go. Nope. It doesn't count if they. It doesn't count as them seeing me if they only catch a brief glimpse of me, everybody. It's if they actually lock on and start attacking, incidentally. That's the rule of the challenge. Which I'm just making up right now. Oh dear. Sludgehammer or Sloychammer, whatever you're called, you're probably face-palming right now and thinking, Red, you have completely ballsed up the challenge that I suggested to you. Nope, I'm going to insist that I haven't. I'm going to insist that it doesn't count if they only get brief glimpses of me but don't actually identify me as a human. Because, real-life spies, they get seen by lots of people without being completely ID'd, or pinged, as I think the actual spy terminology is. But yes. Okay, well, we'll deposit this device piece back at the Standing Stones, and then we'll possibly wrap up the episode. There's a telephone box that is stuck in the water over here. Wow. You can phone up a friend. Plus you've got water swishing around your ankles, it seems. Okay. Drink up some more tea whilst I'm at it. Whilst I be at it, ladies and gents. Okay, so as we're getting back towards the Standing Stones over here, let's actually start wrapping this up. So, hope you enjoyed then, everybody. This episode 257, the first episode of my latest challenge, the Spy Challenge, as suggested by Sloychammer/Sludgehammer, however you pronounce your name. Hope you enjoy. Yeah, I've already said that. If you're not doing so already, you can follow me on Facebook and Twitter. Links in the video description as always. If you're also interested in seeing me do anime-related content, go check out my General Red Propagandist channel. Link also below. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like, and of course, share it with your friends on Facebook, on Twitter, whatever social media you may be signed up to. In the meantime, goodbye, everybody.
I think this blue look great. Might be wicked. When Teehee or Irving is such a flirt, you just want to see his armoured skirts.
Yes.
That's exactly.
Exactly.
Well, I can't exactly deny that. Oh my god. Before he was not wanting anything, now he's just
Just like you're completely.
How about I try on said I need some suit anyway.
Oh no.
I'll be right back.
After 3 months, you come back wearing a blue bikini.
Here we go.
Yeah. Oh, it's even got an iron cross on it. Can you believe
Nice
it?
as well.
Yeah.
So what do you think? 6. Yeah.
Hot damn.
That's
yes.
it. Hot dad, did I see you in that movie made you in uniform? What?
Uniform.
Yeah. Teehee, that's armor plantain
for God's sake.
It is that good.
Brilliant. Brilliant.
It's like honey pop all over again.